Hey guys, how are you?
Hello.
Morning.
Morning. Sorry, technical difficulties. I see Brandon is not here.
He said he was missing today.
Do we have any agenda or? I will gladly have the time back, but maybe Sajay to. Why did you join twice, Sajay?
I guess he gets twice the votes that way.
I actually started looking last night at what are the call flows for authentication with different registries, but I don't have the results yet. So I just updated my Linux machine and configured the man-in-the-middle proxy and tried just Docker Hub and NVIDIA and figuring out what are the ways to log in there. That's the only thing I wanted to report and eventually chat with Brandon, Sajay. I don't know whether you can hear us, Nathan.
Yep.
What exactly we want to have documented as kind of the different flows. So I have a list of registries that I want to try, including like ACR, Docker Hub, ECR, GCR, or GAR. I have account on NVIDIA. I have account on what was that? Quay, Harbor, and Artifactory. So those are, and eventually Zot. For Zot though, I need to, I shut down, I had it configured with authentication and running on a VM, but I shut it down after KubeCon, so I may need to reconfigure that. But this is the list of registries that I will be trying, and eventually next Tuesday I can have something, at least some diagrams how the flows go.
The two parts to this. One is definitely like when you do the first authentication. So there's the 401 challenge scenario, which is certain clients hit the V1, V2 API. They want to remove that because there's no reason to go to V2. Zot is, Ram was kind of talking about going to the V2 is not really useful for multi-tenancy or something on those lines. The second one is when you go to a repository, you kind of like have to craft what is called as a scope, which is
yes,
that pull push, and canonicalization of scopes doesn't happen today. So repository push pull is not equal to repository pull push because a string is just basic string matching in many places. I think another point we discussed was how do we do things like cross mount, right? Like when you have one repository, can you mount a layer from another repository? That is another unknown portion of the spec, and different registries might implement it differently. And I think the last one was the JOT. Do you even want to call it a JOT, or do you want to call it an opaque payload and not talk about it in the sense of worrying about what is in the payload so that clients don't try to inspect it and things like that? So a couple of different key areas that folks wanted to look at.
So sorry, what is JOT? I'm not sure. I know
JWT. The
sorry,
token
what?
itself, the token itself, like when you do the challenge,
Oh,
when you do the
JWT.
authentication, you get a JWT bar back, right? So
okay, sorry, I wasn't familiar with the
sorry,
way you pronounce it, JOT. Okay, JWT. Okay, got it. Okay. Cross mounting. Are you saying like, let's say, I have a layer in another repository?
yes,
that I may not have access to. Is that what we are talking about?
I mean you need to have access to it. So what certain clients do is they kind of, let's say you pull a very simple example, right? Like you pull from the root of the registry, you build something, and then you push it to your own repository. You have read access to the other one, right? So the base registry is the same. So you can technically do a mount API which says mount this layer from that specific API, from that repository. And so you can say pull on one and pull and push on the other. And technically speaking, the registry will do the mount for you. You don't need to kind of like again push the data. That's what enables cross mount.
But one thing I wanted to chat is, are we going to include any authorization in this working group or not? Is it only Auth, or are we going to talk also about ways to do authorization? Because if I have a fine-grained authorization on the repositories or even lower level, like ABAC, I may not have access to do this cross-mounting, theoretically.
I mean, according to the mission, it specifies authentication and authorization.
And authorization.
Yes. So it's called
Okay.
WG Auth, but I see that in the mission statement, and they do call out that it's includes authorization also. So that's why
Okay.
that's why Ram was talking about multi-tenancy here, because it is more of a mix of both, right?
Okay, got it. Okay. And yeah, I think we talk about scenarios also where you generate dynamic catalog and so on based on the authorization. I hope that we can also have these discussions there.
Yeah, the problem with multi-tenancy is also, I mean, a problem with authorization is that APIs like catalog become really hard to implement, right? Like who can see what?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, that will be tough one. Okay. I don't have anything else for today's meeting, as I said. So I just started playing with this last night and trying to document the flows, but
Yeah, I don't think we have any agenda. I'll just add the names to the HackMD.
I'll just pipe up real quick here. I was kind of looking yesterday at the actual contents of the www Auth challenge header to see what's actually spec'd in there and just trying to figure out, yeah, what's kind of spec'd and what isn't. It seems like it is kind of the Wild West. There isn't any actual specs on most of the values there. So like, for example, the realm, it seems like Docker more or less says that can be a token server, but nobody else actually, none of the actual web specs say that the realm should be the token server. So I'm still kind of digging into that too. So
Are you following the thread on Slack where Jeff is talking about the V2 thing?
yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's kind of, I would like us to document it, because I think the token server endpoint gives a lot of flexibility into where and go getting the token server, right? I mean, the tokens.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't, without that, there isn't a programmatic way to get the token server.
Right.
Most of the documentation I've said is ultimately it's probably each service is supposed to more or less document where its token server is. There isn't necessarily one blessed way to programmatically determine your token server.
Okay.
But that obviously doesn't work very well when we're trying to interop. When you're writing a Docker client, you want to interoperate with all these different clients. If each one you have to go to their documentation and find it and then hard code it and all that stuff.
Can you look at how Scopio Podman, I think one of them have a resolve.conf or something like that that enables registry prefixing and things like that.
Okay. Yeah, I can take a look at that.
by the way, I just remembered something. Sajay, OAuth authentication, right? How I'm trying to figure out how to test that thing. Yes, at least from the two tests that I did yesterday, like Docker Hub authenticates with basic authentication, like by default when you have a username and password. Any thoughts, especially when I actually do a call from the Docker client? So when I do a Docker login, right?
Yes.
That doesn't go through the OAuth flow.
Yeah, I mean, I think have you? I don't remember whether it's exactly a post or a. It's a post, right, with the username password body, or is it basic?
I think it was basic. Yeah, it is basic because I have like a bearer token with.
Yeah, the response would be better, but what I'm trying to ask is, did the username and password go in the encoded header, or does it go as a part of the post body? I don't remember exactly.
In the encoded header.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, at least for that's what I saw for Docker Hub and NVIDIA registry. I'll do more kind of testing.
Yeah.
And we can talk maybe next week.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay.
All right.
Cool.
Thanks,
Anything
folks.
else? Thanks, folks.
Bye.
Have a nice day.